Well, hello, brothers and sisters. This is Father Frank Pavone, National Director of Priests for Life, bringing you another series in our election videos to prepare ourselves to be informed and active voters in this year's elections. Well, today I want to talk about the fact that God uses flawed people to accomplish his purposes. We see this is true in American history, in world history, in salvation history. And it's important for us to keep in mind when we're choosing candidates for whom we will vote. Because as people who are religious, as people who are interested in practicing virtue, as people who want to give a good example to others and pass on good example to our children and grandchildren, this obviously is something that concerns us. What type of people are we electing? What type of virtues do they have? What type of example will they give? We have to ask the question, though, what does it mean to vote for somebody? We are putting them in a particular position to fulfill a particular role. And in order to choose the person for whom we're going to vote, we have to understand not only something about that person, we have to understand the position we are putting that person in by electing them. What responsibilities are they going to have to carry out? It's often said in this context that when we go to the voting booth, we're not electing a pope, we're not electing a pastor, and we're not voting for the canonization of a saint. In those instances, of course, we have to set the bar much higher when it comes to personal virtue. But not necessarily when we're electing a public official. Well, sure, we don't want to elect terrorists. We don't want to elect people who are going to lie or not even care about fulfilling their promises. But on the other hand, we're not electing people based on how they're going to live up to our understanding of virtue or of faith. Rather, I compare it to what criteria we use to choose an auto mechanic, for example. When you choose an auto mechanic, you want them to be able to fix your car, right? What carries more weight in your choice or your evaluation of an auto mechanic? Whether they're really going to know what's wrong with your car and be able to get it to work, or how many times they've been married? Are you going to be concerned about the fact that they have a foul mouth, or that they're going to be able to fix your engine? Of course, from the spiritual point of view, we want people to have personal virtue. But again, when you're talking about the role they have to play, those are the criteria that carry the most weight. What about your decision about which doctor to choose, which surgeon to have do the operation that you need to undergo? You're going to want somebody who knows what he or she is doing when they go into that operating room or when they diagnose your health problem. You're really not going to ask them what religion they practice or whether they go to church every week or what kind of indiscretions they may have committed 30 years ago. You're going to look at who's going to be the best doctor. My friends, don't we have to use the same kind of criterion when we think about those who are going to write our laws or determine who's going to be on our courts or defend our nation? We look, for example, at the job description of a president. A president needs to keep our country safe. The job description of a president also involves what kind of judges they will appoint. Look at the job description and see who's going to carry that out the best. Now, if we look at history, we see many flawed people who nevertheless played a critical role in shaping history for the better because they had the skills of leadership that were needed at that moment. None of them were perfect men. But I invite you in particular to take a close look at Winston Churchill, for example, who helped to save Western civilization from the Nazis in World War II. Look at General George Patton as another example. Study what these men did by their leadership skills, but also compare it to what people were saying about them or thinking about them in terms of their personal character or virtue. People thought Churchill was an unstable and even dangerous man. These people had personal habits that would make us cringe. But the point from God's perspective was they had the skills to lead us at that particular time in history. Look at biblical and salvation history. The people of God who were in exile in Babylon were set free, not by a religiously observant Jew, but by King Cyrus, who did not know the Lord, but whom God chose nevertheless as his instrument. You know, the rabbis have a tradition in which they say that we should choose flawed leaders. They should be with blemish. And you might ask, well, why is that? Because, my friends, unlike the kings and emperors of China and Japan who thought that they were gods, or King Louis XIV of France who thought that the universe revolved around him, people who are flawed, people who know that they've done wrong in the past, are going to be more humble, are going to realize they are not God, they are not the center of the universe. They need the help of the Almighty and of those around them. We need people with humility who are going to seek the right advice and be a little wary of their own weaknesses. And then, of course, we have Hebrews chapter 11. I have the scriptures here open to that passage. There is a list here of people whom the author of the letter to the Hebrews is praising as examples of faith. And yet, we see a list of some pretty serious sinners. King David, Jesus was a descendant of David, right? David not only committed adultery, he killed a man. Rahab, the prostitute, they're listed in this testament of faith in Hebrews 11. God uses flawed people to accomplish his purposes. When I choose somebody in the voting booth, I'm more concerned about what a judge that they might appoint is going to say 30 years from now in a public court decision that affects our entire nation than what he may have said 30 years ago in some private indiscretion. I'm going to be far more concerned about whether a public official is going to vote to fund Planned Parenthood, which has a view of human sexuality that is completely amoral and destructive of our young people, than I am about what that politician may have done in terms of personal sexual morality 20 or 30 years ago. Let's look at the things that are going to affect the kind of job that person is going to do for the office for which we are electing them. This is what matters the most. This is what we have to keep our focus on. Brothers and sisters, God indeed does choose flawed instruments to accomplish his purposes. Let's be wise in our choice, and let's not set up artificial standards for our political leaders that Almighty God doesn't even set up for his biblical leaders. If you want to see more of our election videos, go to electionvideos.org, and our overall website for this election, prolifevote.com. Thanks for watching and sharing this video. I'm Father Frank Pavone of Priests for Life.